So today we are joined by Christopher Connor. Chris is an assistant professor of sociology at University of Missouri Columbia. Chris has recently published an edited book titled Conspiracy Theories and Extremism in New Times. And just 2 years ago, I believe, you also published a book titled Electronic Dance Music. Chris has also published journal articles on a wide variety of topics, including online dating, QAnon, and also using the game Werewolf to teach symbolic interaction, among a whole plethora of other topics. I'll just switch this since I'm only talking to you and there's not actually not an audience right now. You've also written for more popular outlets, which excites me, including Salon, The Conversation, and a variety of local newspapers. And then most importantly for me, you've agreed to be the first recorded guest for my new class, which is titled Sociological Life Lessons. And I really appreciate you being willing to be the first person to have this conversation. So thanks for agreeing and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So a little bit for people watching, people listening, the idea of this class, it's the first time being offered at SUNY Brockport. My basic idea is we as researchers, whether sociologists, geographers, people in gender studies, anthropology, we do a lot of great research. And sometimes we don't take that final step of saying to our audiences, often students, here's how you can take this idea that can sometimes be abstract, or even if we're trying to make it really grounded, but say, here's how you can take it into your own life. And whether that's saying, now that I understand how this institution works, it can help me operate better, whether that shifts our understanding of who we are. But I think we have a lot of lessons to offer, and we don't always do that. And sadly, what we've seen in the public space online, other people have taken they've chosen to occupy that space. They've chosen to be the experts, and we often point to them and say, well, those lessons aren't good, and that's not good for society, and that's not actually right. So I'm hoping that both in this class, so for students at Brockport, but then also making this publicly available, we can say, here's some of the cool research that's happening there. Here's voices like yours who care about doing public sociology. What's a lesson or two that we can take from our research? So that's the idea, at least. That's the experiment.
So it's refreshing to hear somebody else say that. So my career kind of took a winding path, and probably this interview will too.
Yeah, that's the
But
fun part.
yeah, I recognized early on that there's this kind of disconnect we have with like the research we do in the public. And so until recently, I wasn't in a position that required me to publish so heavy. What I had to do, so like what I did to stay active was I made contact with outlets like Salon, The Conversation, these kinds of things, because honestly, I get more of a kick, more of I feel like I actually did something when I write for like a broader audience,
Yeah.
and there's a reward that comes from it. Now, the funny thing is I found out that I was actually able to like reference my articles, and so like if you look at the number of views on some of my articles, they're like super high.
Yeah.
But I didn't go into it with that. I went into it with, hey, how can I get my research out there into the people's hands and reach a broader audience? Because like there's a joke in sociology that we often write for 10 people, and that's
Yeah.
largely true, right?
Yeah.
But I found out by doing this kind of public sociology route, it like some of my articles have like thousands of views, which just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
But it's all because that I took this initiative to find other outlets, and I was at a point in my career where I could do that kind of stuff.
Did you when you're choosing the topics that you're writing on, do you intentionally choose ones that lend itself to that type of public sociology, or rather did your interests kind of push you that way? Because looking at that list of things that I was talking about, all of those that should be exciting beyond just 10 people, right? If you're writing about conspiracy theory, if you're writing about queer spaces in rural environments, if you're writing about electronic music, that should interest people beyond just the 10 experts who are thinking about the theory that you're using.
So I like to tell people that I'm an unlikely candidate to be holding a PhD in sociology, let alone in front of a group of, hundreds of students each semester. Um, I went into this kind of business of sociology because I wanted to understand stuff that I saw in my own life and make sense of it. And what happened was kind of I don't know, by accident almost, that I became really good at writing. And um, I found out how to understand what I was experiencing through the awesome thing that is sociology when it's done with a heart. Like, so I get a lot really frustrated with parts of sociology because I feel like it doesn't speak to the people, right? Like, this is
Mhm.
stuff that C. Wright Mills talked about, or
Yeah.
W.E.B. Du Bois, all these folks. And I kind of sought out to like understand my life through this lens of sociology. And like early on, like I can remember this is a oh man, I don't know what triggered this story. I can remember being in a nightclub, setting up for a band known as My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult.
'Cause you have a
Um,
background as a promoter, right? So that's a key part,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
I came into sociology. I knew so I starting out, I wanted to do like music. I wanted to be a nightclub promoter or like a promoter for like Live Nation or something. But I knew that like most people, that's not necessarily a stable career path, right? And so I always kept taking classes and going to school because you got to eat, right?
Yeah.
And so like I can remember being setting up for a show, setting up. I think it was My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, and finishing my master's thesis and going, all right, cool. Now let's do sound check. And so I kind of had this weird path into academia where I understood, or I wanted to understand my life through the lens of sociology. I saw that it was powerful and it could explain everything I was experiencing, whether it be like who shows up to a live music event, uh, to uh, all kinds of things like how we develop our identity, or who believes in conspiracy theories, or like bigger questions. And so it might have been that like music and electronic dance music and all these things got me into sociology, but now the stuff I'm doing is beyond that. Now I'm interested in what some might call more traditional sociology, in that I'm interested in studying inequalities, power, that kind of stuff, and making an impact that way.
So you have a few different areas of interest that you've published on that would lend itself well to this goal of saying, "All right, so what's a lesson that people can take from it?" Do you wanna choose one of them? And we can I'm curious if you could introduce one of those topics and talk a little bit about what it looked like to start doing that research, what inspired you, and then we could talk a little about methods and where you went with it. But it's gonna be hard to talk about all the different topics because you have a few different directions.
So this is actually good practice because I'm getting ready to go up for tenure and promotion. So I need to like tell a story about that makes sense and coherent,
Yeah,
right? So for starters, I was always in this kind of temporary labor market, and so I didn't have to like drill down on one specific topic. And so I was just like, all right, I'm interested in this. I want to go study this.
yeah.
I'm interested in that. Like, but here's the thing. Um, all of my research focuses around the online life. Like, what is
Oh, okay.
this digital space doing? How is it shaping our lives? Right. So, like, my first publications on Grinder and gay dating apps, and how we reproduce inequality in what should be a really private space, but it isn't. Right. It's in some ways it's become the new gay bar, right? And I really hate that too, by the way. Um, and then
What it say more about when you say you hate it, say more.
well, I hate
Not to do some sort of like
right, right,
really
right.
get into it. Oh, I should have said I failed in the introduction because the way that I initially found your work and then I tracked it back to your academic work is because you have a really good Substack that does a great job of really writing in an entertaining manner and then referencing academic and sociological theory. So at the end, I'll have you say the name of it, but sorry to interrupt, but
Oh, no,
keep going.
that's actually really cool. I would have never guessed that's how you found me. Sometimes I feel like when I'm writing for that, I'm just screaming into the void. Um,
I heard you screaming. So
Someone came to rescue. Okay.
yeah.
Um, yeah, sorry, could you okay,
Oh yeah,
so
the question was you said that you said these apps are in a sense are serving as a new gay bar, and you said you hate that, and I was just curious why.
I hate it because it flattens out the human interaction, right? And it
Yeah.
reduces it to our most banal characteristics, right? And it allows for people to act in ways that they probably wouldn't otherwise. And I'm not immune to that, by the way. Like I'm, I'm a human being like everybody else. I'm sure done some dumb stuff online that I shouldn't have. Um, but what interests me in this space is how quickly we reproduce social hierarchies of beauty, of class, of racism, almost at warp speed, right? So, like,
Mhm.
I don't think some of the things that people say to people they would do if they were at a physical location because they would probably get their faces punched in.
Yeah.
Um, and I say that with all due respect, right? But um, some of the behaviors that people engage in online are just horrific, right?
Yeah.
And so, kind of the starting point for that whole line of research was I was like, hey, there's a lot of sociology on these dating apps, and nobody's really writing about it. Why is that? And
Yeah.
I got a lot of pushback on getting those articles out there. Even today, I still get pushback, but it's different. It's not as much.
What was the pushback more for concerns about the methods that you're using or just the topic? Like what were people because it like you're saying, that's incredibly sociologically rich area and it's also becoming a dominant way that people meet each other.
So, if you want my honest opinion, I think I had three reviewers. Only one of them understood what social media was,
I see,
and
yeah.
because like the arguments that I had to defend my work against were not something I would expect from someone who's of a particular age, let's say. Um,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, it. Sorry, what was? Can
Well,
you
so
repeat the?
how did you do the research? Because one of the challenges with online, I mean, you could, if you're looking at message boards, obviously you could do content analysis of what people are saying, but you're looking at dating apps, so it's not a public posting. So I'm curious, what kind of data did you collect? What method did you use?
So there were some interviews I did, and I would actually have to go back now because it's been so long
Yeah,
maybe I want to say somewhere in the ballpark of like 20 to 50 interviews. Um, and and some of that stuff is like on the cutting room floor, so it doesn't,
yeah,
but um, sorry, ADHD, yeah, it kind of it began as like, "Hey, I just wanna analyze people's profiles and what they say," because at the time, they were
I
really,
see,
like,
yeah,
saying some horrifically racist stuff,
yeah,
and I put it in the article too, which that got
mhm,
a huge pushback, because there was concern about the anonymity of the data, and, but these are, like, for the most part, headless profiles,
yeah,
and, you know, de-identified, but also, it would be real I think it would be extraordinarily hard to track down who those people. I don't think I could track
yeah,
down who those people were this to this day.
yeah.
Um, so that's kind of, how that came about, and I feel like I'm doing a horrible job answering your question.
No, 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 you're getting at so you were looking both at profiles, which in a way are publicly available because if you're in the geographic region and you have the app, then you see the people, and then you're interviewing people about their use of Grindr and other dating apps, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the interviews actually this was kinda interesting. One of the, interviews was with someone who I knew, we're not very close anymore, but not because of this. All right.
Yeah.
But um, I found out. So there's the first article that came out, which is like, hey, here's all the crazy stuff people do on Grinder. And then there's like a follow-up piece in, I think, deviant behavior. And as I was trying to write that second piece, I got some pushback from the peer reviewers, and they were like pushing me on different ways. And I said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write about how white people reproduce racism on the app, because like some of these guys you get talking and they will hang themselves. And so there's this second article in deviant behavior where I talk about how racism and like they don't even see what they're doing as like racist, right? They just see it as like, oh, that's just what I'm attracted to, bro.
Yeah.
And like they're unwilling to interrogate that further. I was actually, so I won't tell you the details, but one of the participants in the study, I was able to get to like open up and really think about things. And the next thing I know, they're like hooking up with people who they wouldn't have hooked up with before.
Which
And
I
I
guess
was like,
is a public sociology of sorts, I suppose.
I guess, I don't know. I'm not saying I fixed him,
Yeah.
but I am saying I at least got him to interrogate his preconceived biases and notions, which at the end of the day, that's really all I want, is people to like look at what they're doing, look at how they're reproducing inequality, how they could do better.
And so when people were saying things which they did not initially perceive as racist, because this is hard to do when you're interviewing someone about a sensitive topic. So they would say something about like, "Oh, I'm only interested in having sex with white guys," something like that. So then you would follow up, and how would you handle the next step? Would you immediately call them out, or would like what do you do to maintain that rapport, because you don't want them to walk away, right?
Yeah, so like again, you kind of just, one of the coolest tricks about ethnography is just staying quiet
Yeah.
and making people live in uncomfortable silence. And this is a great trick for people who teach class, by the way. Is just don't, and you'll be like, oh man, I gotta say something,
Yeah.
and just no, don't do it, because they will eventually hang themselves, and that's kind of what happened. And you can kind of push them a little bit, but you got to be careful how you do it, because you don't want the interview to end.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that went down, is like when and I was also using my whiteness as a way to leverage other white people to
Yeah.
talk about stuff that they I mean, I wish these guys could hear themselves, honestly. Like some of the things that they said, and I didn't publish everything. I try
Yeah.
to make people look as good as possible, but um, it whatever it is about this online space, about dating apps, it allows people to think about race, or rather not think about race, like to reify it, right? To treat
Yeah.
it as it's a real thing rather than a social construct, and then to not interrogate where those ideas come from and how they reproduce them in their own lives. And so like for me, that's the real impact or importance of that line of work on gay dating apps, is get people to think about how they're treating other people, and how they can do better. And also, personally, I think the dating apps suck. I've always done better in person
Yeah.
than these online apps. And some of my partners actually, we didn't meet online. We didn't even meet at a gay bar. We met at a weird goth night. So, you know,
How when you were interviewing people, how much did you draw on your own identity and your own experience as a way to enter into certain questions? Because that can be a useful way to build rapport too. And then other people would say, no, you should try to keep distance and not make those connections. I'm kind of curious how you approached it.
Yeah, so Gary Allen Fine has an article about this, and I think he says that any sociologist that studies a world that they're part of is basically stupid. And I am like totally against that, right? Because that's my
Yeah.
whole career is
Yeah.
studying my own life through the lens of sociology. And it at times does get depressing, right?
Yeah. It can ruin things that you love very quickly.
Oh,
That is like a risk of
totally.
yeah.
Totally. Like it has so my other line of research is electronic dance music was which is my dissertation. And it is only now. So that was like what was that? Like 20 15. It's only now that I am back to like loving dance music again because
Oh,
it
it's
like totally
10
killed
years,
it for
yeah.
me for a really long time. I didn't want to go to anything. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't care. But now I'm back at it. Like I showed you my turntables. Like
Yeah.
I'm very much involved in that music again,
Wait,
but it took me a
so
while.
how did it ruin was it that you were just had to think about it so intensely that you needed a break, or was it that your research revealed some ugly sides of this scene?
Yeah,
Or both?
both.
Both? Yeah.
It
Not either or.
like the first thing that happened was I went and I was so my dissertation, which became a book, is on basically the Electric Daisy Carnival, which happens in Las Vegas each year, and it's got a couple like satellite locations. One's in Florida. I can't remember. One's in Rothbury, Michigan. Anyway, um, it killed it for me because I was going to these dinners with these really respected, high profile dance music artists in Las Vegas, and they were just some of the most awful human beings that
Yeah,
I'd ever been around. And so it kind of killed it. It demystified it, and it like um showed me the real life of it showed me a side that I didn't want to see basically.
which is interesting
And
because social media gives us access to celebrities and our I mean, it's a classic "don't meet your hero" type thing, right? But social media gives us access to our heroes and celebrities in a way that we've never had before, and I think about the relationship that students have to people that they're whether it's music, whether it's athletes, whether it's, actors, it's like they get to see sides of them that we never would have been able to find out unless we saw some, like, long profile piece in whatever magazine, and even that would have already been through a different type of filter, and for you, you're getting, like, sitting at the table talking to them.
it was wild. um And so one thing I will say is, shout out to the Crystal Method. They were like instrumental for me gaining access to a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
And they turned out to be like the most real DJ group ever. But celebrity culture aside, yeah, it really kind of ruined it for me. So I guess my advice to your students is be careful what you study because you may ruin it for yourself, and then you'll
yeah,
never want to pick it up. Like it took me literally 10 years to like detox from all the horrible stuff I saw to a point where now I'm like, okay, I really love this music again.
yeah. When you When you write about especially when you're writing in more popular outlets, do you ever send what you write to some of the people in the scene, or is it more you just put it out there and see where it falls, let people discover it?
Honestly, most of my contacts, they will occasionally respond. So I don't know if I can say his name or not. So I used to work for a promoter agency. Um, there's a character known as Disco Donnie, and I
Okay.
love Donnie to death. Um, and he wrote a really nice review of my book. It's on the back cover. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I don't have access to that level anymore. So like
Yeah,
I
once you leave it, you don't really it's not like you're still can just email that DJ or something, right?
yeah, it made doing the dissertation kind of hard because as time went on, people were slower and slower to get back to me.
Yeah,
And now they just are like, who the fuck are you?
yeah,
And, um, you know, and also I think if they actually read my work, they're like, "Ooh, I don't know
Yeah.
how I want to get." I did do a test run with a promoter out of Chicago who turns out to be a really lovely person. So I think most people don't actually read my stuff. So you
Yeah.
know, but um, they're a pretty low level like promoter. But yeah.
So I'm curious if, going across these different areas of interest, are were there particular theorists that you were inspired by or found useful in the field or just when you're doing the analysis? And especially going back to the fact that one of the things I enjoy about your Substack is occasionally you'll bring in a social theorist from, 1800 or 1900, and then you're like, "No, this relates exactly to the experience I had last weekend," or whatever you're writing about. So I'm kinda curious who the social theorist or theorists you found inspiring who were the ones you found inspiring?
So I remember the moment, actually. I can remember the exact moment I was in, the man who would become my second father, dissertation supervisor in his class. He was giving his lecture on the culture industry,
Okay.
Horkheimer and Adorno, the Frankfurt School, and I just could not get enough of that. I was like, "What is this? This is what I've been looking for through 4 years of undergrad and 2 years at a separate master's program, and then all of a sudden I find it like week 8 maybe in this seminar class, and I was like, this is it. And after that, man, it was on. Like, I read everything I could get my hands on. Before that, I was kind of a little, I won't say lazy, but eh, nothing had moved me in the way
Yeah.
that this stuff did, and I was like, "That's exactly how it is." I know because I lived that life. Like, this is it, and um, then from there, the rest is kind of like history.
What was it about their writing? I mean, it's difficult, it's kinda putting you on the spot, but were there particular things that I mean, you were saying they were right, it was spot on, you could see it in what you're encountering in your own life, but were there certain aspects of the critiques they were offering of society, of culture that you're like, "That actually gives me a way to understand this thing?"
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like a lot of Horkheimer and Adorno's writing is about how the political element, the edge, as it were, gets kind of taken out of the culture industry to make it really accessible to a mass audience, and I can relate to that because if you try to have something that's too smart or too edgy or too um what I want to say that makes people think too much, man, talk about a
It's
way to
not easily
ruin ticket
consumable,
sales.
right? Yeah, that's challenging in some way.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
and so like from that angle, like that's something I can point to. But everything they wrote about it was like, oh yeah, man, I can this plugs in here, this plugs in here. It totally explained what was way too long of a period of my life, frankly. But
yeah,
and illuminated it. And after that, I read everything. It didn't matter if it was related to my topic or not. I read everything. In fact, it was kind of funny. The grad students in my program would come up to me and ask me about the reading for the week. And there was this particular class, and I would like be the first one to answer, and the professor would not like my answer at all. But they all hadn't done the reading, and they were just using my notes. And he would be like, "Oh man, that's so your spot." I'm like, "That's my stuff, man." So, um, yeah, I mean, I became once I found out like that there was something out there that nearly explained a huge chunk of my life. I was sold. I was like, this is where it's at. Sociology is awesome. And and I'm still a sicko to this day. If once I get like on a topic, I read everything. And it is like an illness, frankly.
yeah. It's an illness that we get rewarded for
I
within
mean,
the career.
sometimes, right? Sometimes we
Yeah.
get rewarded rewarded for it.
Yeah, optimistically.
Yeah. Um,
Wait, so
you
I've
know,
got this for reading, thinking about the Frankfurt School. It makes a lot of sense the way you were describing, especially thinking about electronic music. Was it also were those theorists also useful for understanding dating apps? I'm kinda curious about that because that connection in my mind, I don't see the like, it for the dissertation topic, like, it clicks immediately. I'm curious if you see a connection there too.
so I've done a lot of these, and I think that's the first time anybody's asked that question. That's a good question. Um, so yes and no. So the
Mhm.
thing about the online world that differs from the dance music stuff is the online world really, what Marx would say mystifies, or makes hidden how things actually work, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, people are just sorted into a grid, but like, and I'm talking about Grinder here
Yeah.
specifically. But there's also like now there's like kind of gamified elements that you can like get your profile boosted so more people can see you, this kind of stuff. So it makes the culture industry stuff harder to see, but it's still
Yeah.
there, right? They're
Yeah.
still
It's
selling
still
you.
flattening and reducing the complexity of
Oh, yeah.
right?
In fact, Thomas Penny has this great chapter in one of my edited volumes, and this is not me trying to sell books. But
Feel free I mean, feel free, I'm not against it.
it's
We
called
have to do
uh,
what we have to do.
it's called Gaze Under Glass, right?
Mhm.
And he like that analogy of like, yeah, we're really reducing ourselves to a two-dimensional um thing, to a two-dimensional person. And there's a lot more to people. Like I can tell you, I've been with people who are super like there's a I don't know if I should say this, but there's a guy I'm kind of interested in right now,
Mhm.
and I I remember when we first met, I was like, "This guy's into me." But it's because we didn't meet on the apps. We met in a
Yeah,
three-dimensional space where we were connecting on
yeah.
like a way to like even now when I spend time with him, it's like
It's a
the
different path
world
to attraction,
spins.
right? Yeah,
What's
it's a
that?
different path it's a different path to attraction, right?
Yeah.
Because we're on the app, you're socialized to say you look for the I don't know, the features that you like or the skin color that you like that you were finding in your research, right? Or you're looking for an exact height or an exact build, and
Yeah.
that's not how you interact with someone when you sit down with them or when you bump into them in a coffee shop or at the goth night, right? It's a different type of interaction.
Well, and that's funny because this guy I'm thinking of, we actually met at the goth night. But
Yeah.
uh um
We could
yeah,
just go 30 minutes telling the story of the goth night instead.
I mean, well, yeah, it's actually like probably one of my most memorable events. But anyway, yeah, it these apps, they really kind of flatten out our qualities as human beings. It doesn't allow for nuance. It's instantaneous. Like I don't have to. I can sit in my chair and get on my phone and be on these apps. If I want to go out to like a gay bar, I've got to like, you know, I gotta put some stuff on. I gotta make myself look good.
Yeah,
And so in that way, the apps create this culture industry, right? Where
yeah,
people are reduced to objects and sold as commodities
yeah,
by Grinder or eHarmony or what else. And so that's my attraction to like the dating app stuff is
yeah,
how the
and
gay
you up
bar
your
basically
status
goes online.
through and you can also up your status through, "These are the people that I've been able to hook up with," which then it starts to commodify it even more, right?
Well, that's all like, let me tell you, that's always
Mhm.
been the case in the gay world
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
But, yeah, so, like, I'm old enough that I know a time before the dating apps and,
mm,
like, as they came out, and, it's been very interesting to see how these apps kind of flatten our image, which again relates back to the electronic dance music because it's all about sucking the real human experience out
yeah.
and reducing us to commodities to be bought and sold.
Is there any positive of the dating apps? Is there any reason to celebrate them? Or after your research, would you say, just such a net negative that, burn it all down?
Well, increasingly, it is, something I say burn it all down
Mm,
because, there was a decision by, Grindr to, um, go public, and
mm.
now they're involved with a corporation known as Palantir.
Oh, okay, yeah,
And I'll let your students look that up on their own, but
yeah,
essentially, um, Palantir is a massive surveillance
yeah,
system that that does a lot of things that I think are unethical in terms of um, like they have bots on these apps that
mm,
try to increase your interaction, your time spent on the app.
yeah,
There's a level of monitoring that goes into this. They're using it for ice raids.
yeah,
Um, they're using a couple different apps for ice raids, but so now I am very, very, very anti dating app. There was a period of time where I said humans could use this technology in different and exciting ways, and people do. Like I used it when I
mm,
was overseas, and it became a lifesaver for me
mm,
as far as figuring out where to go, what to do. Um, I met some really lovely people on there.
mhm.
The way we use it here in the United States, though, is really different and really, it's a very much a different world. But um, it's very much about only about hooking up, not
Mhm.
about anything more than that. And
So it not
uh,
just flattens who the person is, it flattens what the experience is that you're going to have with them
oh yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. My most memorable moments aren't necessarily moments where I took someone home from the gay bar.
Mm,
My most memorable moments were just being out dancing with friends, like,
yeah,
and um, but increasingly, what I see that app culture has done is it's turned going out into a constant kind of game of hookup that
mm,
that David Grazian kind of writes about in his book On the Make.
yeah.
Um, so,
Alright, so for the final and potentially I don't know if it's the most challenging question. I shouldn't say that. That sets a different tone for it. But the final question is thinking about your research, thinking about your experiences, is there a lesson or 2, and you've kind of been doing this already, but I'm wondering if you could boil it down to a lesson or 2 that you would tell to students who are either going to read your research or hearing you talk about it. What would you say now that you've become an expert in these areas? Is there something that people can take into their own life from this?
oh God.
I told you it would might be the most difficult. I retracted that statement, but I do believe it. It's hard sometimes.
um, so lessons that they can learn, that they can take.
Yeah.
Um,
Other than don't rely just on the dating apps, which is already one of the
yeah, I mean,
lessons.
I'm telling you
I
what,
mean,
like
that's part of it. That is a real thing though, right? Like
I
students are coming to the age where we're attached to our phones. So
I do way better if I just go out. Like,
yeah.
but these apps make it so hard. Like it's just like, well, I could go out or I could just, order in. um,
Yeah.
but I think the big lesson that I've learned from all this is that the online space is ultimately determined by what we do as human beings,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
And so, like, um, for me, Grinder was a wonderful tool while I was backpacking across Europe and trying to figure out what the heck to do or where to go. And it's become a lot harder though because there's evidence to support the idea that they use bots or that they are engaging in some other kinds of behavior.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say, honestly, get out there and experience the world, whether that be electronic dance music or something else. It's not to say that the online world doesn't have its place. Like,
Yeah.
I've met some really cool people online through my activities on Twitch, and as a sociologist. Like, I'm kind of known as the sociologist on Twitch,
Yeah.
kind of. Um, there really there's a guy named Gary David, um, who's really the sociologist on Twitch. But um, yeah, I don't like. I
It's a,
think
it's a really useful lesson to hear from you because in some ways the areas of scholarship that I found most convincing in being celebratory of more online interactions would be stories of, "Hey, I'm growing up gay in a rural area." It's like, how do I find anyone else having these experiences? So online provides this, and that research often came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s when we could be more optimistic about what the online world would be. And so it's interesting for you to be saying like, look, I see that I've lived some of that life, but it like don't get stuck on there, especially the way maybe it's something about what the corporations are doing with this technology has changed. But
yeah,
so that's why I think
COVID
you giving that lesson is like a big deal.
COVID made it real. Like, I'll tell you, up until recently, I had a lot of post COVID anxiety. Like, I actually was gonna do this kind of ethnographic work about the gay circuit scene, so like gay raves. And
Mm.
I got to the venue and I just choked. I was like, I
Yeah.
started having a panic attack, and I was so embarrassed, um, because I went to great lengths to basically get access and all that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's an easy trap to to fall into, and there's actually some research on this topic. Um, and I think things have changed too. When Grinder first came out, it was owned by a guy in West Hollywood, and then it got sold to a tech company and became this, a part of a multinational corporation. And
Yeah.
that's when you start to see a change and a shift where everything became monetized. And I think you're maybe looking for like what's the big lesson from your work?
I don't
Well,
I feel like you gave a kind of big lesson though, right? About
well,
embracing the messiness of the personal interaction, whether it leads to getting to have a quick hookup or not. Right?
yeah, but I think that it goes a little farther than that too.
Mm,
Like, I think the whole point of my work is that we can determine how these technologies influence and shape our world, right? It's not just app makers and developers. That, like, we as human beings, we have agency, and we can turn our
yeah,
backs on these things too. And there are a lot of people doing that right now, specifically related to Grinder. There are, I think I saw some parties in New York where they were like deleting their Grinder apps, which I thought, yes, that's cool.
yeah,
Because it's an interesting tool. It's just one that you shouldn't fully get absorbed with.
yeah. I think that works as the takeaway lesson. In my mind, it does.
I'll take it.
No, this was a really fun conversation. I'd say, you made me feel good about this project, so I call it a success.
Woo! I did the good thing today.
You did a good thing today. No, this was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. So thanks again for being the first conversation and making it work, even though the class falls outside a schedule that because I mean, I know you're so busy with teaching and traveling and all those things. So I really appreciate it.
Boy, yes. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm stopping recording.